Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be going through our dynasty moves to make to rebuild your roster.
Hike!
In this episode, Joe and I are going to provide 3 players each that we think that you should be targeting in trades as you rebuild your roster. We're in peak season in trades right now because either the rookie draft is already happened or going to be happening. So that means you're going to start seeing an uptick in trades. Joe, who's the first player that you've identified that you're going to target and go get?
Yeah, first player I'm going to go with is quarterback J.J. McCarthy of the Minnesota Vikings. Poised to make his NFL debut here in his technically first full season. He didn't really get to play last year, even though he was drafted last year. But look, the quarterback draft, the players in this up last draft just weren't that great at the quarterback position. J.J. McCarthy probably would have been the top guy in this draft class, honestly, had he played his senior year at Michigan. And then he's just in a great situation with the Minnesota Vikings. Kevin O'Connell there gets a throw to Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Jalen Naylor came on last year. Got TJ Hawkinson, that good run game. And I think, in his first full year here, he should really be able to excel with the pieces around him.
Yeah, what do you think about his value right now as far as what you'd have to do to acquire him? And I mean, because obviously, like you said, he's basically redshirted the first year. So, what do you think you'd have to give up to get a guy like him at this point? Because in a super flex type league, you could argue, like you said, if Cam Ward's the 104, 105, you probably have to trade that to get a guy like McCarthy, right?
Yeah, I mean, most likely I would think so. I mean, I guess it would just, I would personally, if I was going to take Cam Ward, one of those picks, I'd much rather just trade it and have the opportunity to have JJ McCarthy. I think he's going to be the better guy, and I think he was, more NFL ready to go, and just he's in a lot better situation with the Vikings and coaching and just the weapons as well.
So my first player that I'm targeting as a dynasty move to make to rebuild my roster is wide receiver George Pickens of the newly Dallas Cowboys, no longer a Pittsburgh Steeler with all the controversy with him being there. He's 24.2 years old. He's got 1 year remaining on his contract, and I really like that. The reason why I do is because, as we like to talk about, Joe, he wants to ball out so he can cash out, whether that's with the Dallas Cowboys or maybe he becomes a free agent. He gets to sign where he wants to go, which I think would be very appealing. If you look at it right now on Keep Trade Cut, he's wide receiver 32, which is quite low. And even at, we tend to reference Draft Shark's trade value chart there, our friends over there. He's a 34. So you're looking at Chase Brown, Sam Laporta, Sam Darnold in Superflex League. So you're not really talking about all that much. He's been, I'd say, a disappointment. He's been wide receiver 42, wide receiver 30, and wide receiver 39. So it's not like he's done all that well with all that flash and all that flair that we talk about, Joe. Hasn't really materialized. Now, I know that some will look at the Pittsburgh history of trades and say, history says it doesn't look good, right? They traded Deontay Johnson in his final year as rookie deal. They netted a 6th-round pick in Dante Jackson. Deontay Johnson, we've seen what happened to him. Antonio Brown, they got a 3rd and a 5th-round pick. 2 years remaining on his deal, went to the Raiders. We saw what happened to him. They got a 2nd-round pick when they traded Chase Claypool at the deadline to the Bears. He had basically a year and a half remaining. So I could see some pause with him, and that's where I think you want to target guys that you think there's an opportunity where you could actually get them. And at the end of the day, let's think about it. Who did George Pickens play with at the quarterback position? Kenny Pickett for 2 seasons, and then the Russell Wilson / Justin Fields experience. Dak Prescott as his quarterback. Not that I think Dak is like all world, but it's no comparison, the type of quarterback that he'll be able to play with Dak compared to what he's played to up until this point.
Yeah, I mean, Russell Wilson was a good quarterback for him to have just because, a lot of people say nobody really throws a better deep ball than Russell Wilson, and he's got those moon balls, and that's exactly, the kind of plays we've seen, Pickens excel at. So, I mean, I know Dak Prescott also has a good deep ball, but I think it'll also benefit Pickens to not have to be the number one guy. He's got a guy like CeeDee Lamb on the opposite side to kind of take some of the attention away from him, and I think that'll that'll just help outside of, the quarterback issues that he's had.
I mean, what other threats did he really have? Like you said, I mean, you had Calvin Austin the third and Pat Freiermuth. I mean, the offense, there wasn't a lot of threats. They could really just focus on George Pickens, where in the Dallas Cowboys offense, you can't say the same thing with CeeDee Lamb. I mean, look back in the day when you had Amari Cooper. I believe Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb played with each other before Amari Cooper was no longer there, correct? At least for a year, I think there was an overlap there.
Yeah, I think that at least a year.
Yeah. So again, somewhat of a controversial guy to rebuild your roster on, but he's still young. He's only 24 years old. And depending on who has him in their league, they could be really excited about this move in Dallas. They could say this is an opportunity for me to offload him. So to me, he's a guy who they may consider doing this trade.
So you don't have any concern, like if he continues to be a problem in the locker room, which I think in Dallas especially, they'll put up with it. But I guess if they're not willing to put up with it, he hits the free agency market. Will other teams? We heard that, outside the Dallas Cowboys, there really wasn't that many teams interested in trading for George Pickens, despite the high ceiling that he potentially has on the field, in the intrigue there. But I think for a lot of teams that, that dynamic of him not being the best locker room guy really affects him.
He's a risky rebuild choice. There's no question about
Yeah.
it. There's safer ones out there. This is really based on your risk tolerance. And at the end of the day, this could boom for you. It could very well. Right. And so to me, if you want a safer option, he's not the guy. But if you're willing to risk it a little bit, I think he's worth that possible. He could definitely go sideways to what you're saying. There's no question about it. History would say it, but there's always outliers. So people want to focus on what's happening in the norm, but there's always going to be somebody who breaks the norm.
Yeah, I guess I'd be willing to buy him on the low with those concerns. Hope he has a really good year right here with the Cowboys, and then sell high on him because I'm not sure what's going to happen after that.
I could see that. So who do you got for your second player here, Joe?
Yeah, the second player, I'm going to go with wide receiver Rashee Rice of the Kansas City Chiefs. Kind of similar to your George Pickens, Steve. This is another kind of a risky pick. Battling back from knee injury, also a hamstring injury as well. Then there's also the looming, possible suspension that he might face for the court case. Personally, I'm not as concerned about that, but you're looking at, Rashee Rice is still a young player, 24 and a half years old. And to me, he's still going to be the main focal point of this Chiefs wide receiver core. They got Xavier Worthy in the draft last year. To me, I still think we saw the utilization creep up at the end of last year, but I really think he's more so of their gadget player and wanted the big plays. They also have Hollywood Brown, which I'm not sure how relevant he's going to be. I mean, in the games Rashee Rice has been healthy, he is the guy, dominates the target, and based off of what I'm seeing on Twitter and his rehab and him working through those drills, looks like he's coming back from the injury quite nicely. And, as far as the suspension goes, I know everyone want to keep talking about that, but there's still not a court date for him or a trial date that's happening. So to me, I think he might go a whole nother season, suspension free here.
Ooh, boy, that'd be interesting. I don't blame you here. Again, this is a more risky one, though, because if things go sideways with the law, then you've got a situation possibly on your hands. But you're taking the gamble, and honestly, I get it. I mean, he became that staple in the offense with Patrick Mahomes. We saw when he was no longer there how it affected things. I mean, heck, who knows? I mean, I don't think they would have beat the Eagles, but had Rashee Rice been there, what would have looked different? Because we've seen the impact he's made, and it's pretty remarkable. All right, so my next player I'm going to be talking about here is wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. of the Arizona Cardinals. Look, guys, he's age 22.8, right? So he's going to be almost close to 23 years old. He's got 3 years plus 1 remaining with that fifth-year option. More than likely, you'd expect the Cardinals to have a fifth year. They'll accept it unless something goes really, really wrong. He's wide receiver 10 on keep trade cut. I thought it was interesting. If you look at the Draft Sharks trade value chart, he's below Xavier Worthy, T. Higgins, and A.J. Brown. I think that's crazy. I mean, let's not forget here, he was a consensus 101 selection in last year rookie dynasty drafts. I mean, sure, people had maybe thought about Malik Neighbors, but he was a distant, like, okay, we need to have Marvin Harrison. I think this is a little bit too much recency bias with him. I recognize that he did not have a good season last year, finished as a wide receiver 30, right? I get it, but I'm going to bet on his upside. His value is just too low right now. And if you're thinking about rebuilding, this is a trade that I'm interested in because at the end of the day, I'd be shocked if his value doesn't improve from this point. I mean, maybe he just never materializes. It's possible. But, because his value is depreciated, this is a great opportunity. He's so young. You've got time to get this. You can wait 2-3 years before he really kind of gets into his groove. So to me, it's a slam dunk to be able to try to acquire him.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, like to your point, I mean, I can't see him doing any worse than what he did in his rookie year. There was also the whole thing with that he was dealing with last offseason with the whole Fanatics thing and the jersey and everything else where and this year, he's gonna not have all those distractions, gonna get the full off season in there with Kyler Murray. And I think in the second year here, I think his connection with Kyler Murray, they should be able to get more on the same page. And I think to your point, he should have a lot better year 2 than his rookie year last year.
The only question I'd have is with the players that we've talked about up until this point, so McCarthy, Pickens, and Rashee Rice, they all have an angle that I would say, okay, yeah, it's possible that the other team would consider trading them. For the Marvin Harrison Jr. owner, even though the value says what it is, are they really at the point where they view him as a sunk cost and they're willing to take less? At the end of the day, they probably took him at the 101. Are they going to say, okay, I'm going to take the sunk cost and take less? That's a little bit, to me, even though the value says what it is, this one might be a little bit more harder to pull off. You're probably going to have to I think you'll probably have to give more value than what is being said that he has. So be prepared. If you are going to try to target him, it's going to cost you.
So I guess what would it take to get Marvin Harrison from your team?
Yeah, boy. I mean, look, it really depends. If I'm going to rebuild, and I'm going to be very blunt on this, you do not take a running back. In my mind, you take running backs when you're in a win-now window. You've got a few years to compete, and this is the time to do it. So I wouldn't even really trade him for the 101, to be honest with you, because to me, it's like, would you rather have Ginty or would you rather have Marvin Harrison? And I would tell you that at the end of the day, I would rather have Marvin Harrison. Because with Ginty, even though I think he could be really, really good, if I'm in a rebuild stage, by the time I'm actually able to compete, I may be looking at year 3, year 4, and hoping that I can muster up the strength to be able to be a competitive team. So it doesn't make sense. Now, in an IDP offense league, which we're in, if I had the option to get Travis Hunter, I may consider taking Travis Hunter over Marvin Harrison because of that IDP upside. I mean, for him to get points on both sides, I mean, that's just an absolute unicorn. You're talking about, we've talked about it, like the Shohei Ohtani in baseball.
Yeah,
so to me, that might be tempting. But other than that, I don't know. It'd be pretty hard. I mean, somebody would have to really, give me quite a bit for me to consider at this point because I don't. Why would I do that? I've already invested so much in him. I'd rather just say, hey, if year 2 stinks, I'm willing to say, okay, great, I took a loss and I got to move forward. He just has too much upside.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, it's a good question.
Jr. Yeah,
it's a good question. All right, so who is your final player, Joe, that you're looking to get to rebuild your roster?
Yeah, final player. I'm going to go with another quarterback, and that's Bryce Young with the Carolina Panthers. Guy that we've talked about recently, Steve. But just looking at the draft Sharks Superflex trade value chart here for the quarterback position, Bryce Young is actually listed lower than JJ McCarthy. Got guys like Tua, CJ Stroud, Jordan Love ahead of him, despite still by the season rolls around, he'll be just 24 years old. Potentially with the 5th year option, he'll have 3 years left with the Carolina Panthers if they choose to accept it, which I think if he keeps playing like the way he ended last season, they will pick that up. And I think just, we mentioned the second year with Dave Cannell's offense, having Ted McMillan there, the different wide receivers options between, Thielen, Xavier Legette, Jalen Coker as well. I think things are really setting up nicely for Bryce Young to have a nice year 3. And, maybe up to this point, Bryce Young was another guy that, I mean, I know he was taken right at the top of our rookie draft in our league. So the guy that's, teams have invested a lot of capital into him, not necessarily seeing the return. So I think he's a guy they could potentially get from somebody.
Yeah, I think this is a good choice by you. Again, this is a player that I think there is an opportunity to acquire him. Because if I'm a Bryce Young owner and I'm fully out on him or I'm not convinced that he can put it all together, this is your buyback opportunity, right? Because if you tried to sell him before, then he went through the crater, he got benched by Andy Dalton, then he started coming back up, right? And then you're like, okay, and he finished off the year strong. Now, like you said, they had a ton of those additions. The marquee one of Ted McMillan in the first round, top 10. So I agree with you. There is a possibility there. And he could hit. I mean, there's a reason why he went number 1 in the draft. I had him ranked really highly. So I could definitely see someone making that call and trying to acquire him.
Yeah, I honestly was just kind of surprised with how low, he was on the Superflex rankings. And even a guy that we haven't even seen yet play, like JJ McCarthy. I know he's with the Vikings, got all those options, but to be, 1 point higher than Bryce Young, I thought was interesting.
Well, I just think the perception of Bryce Young is pretty low. I haven't heard many who are like really, really high on him, to be honest. All right, so last guy I'm going to be talking about here, I'm going to be talking about quarterback Justin Herbert of the LA Chargers. He's 27 years old. He's got 5 years remaining on that huge contract extension that he signed with the Chargers. He's quarterback 10 on Keep Trade Cut. Has a pretty high Draft Sharks trade value at 62. But look what the Chargers have done. They brought in additions of Trey Harris in the draft. They already have a guy like Ladd McConkey, who you saw. They've been, especially in that playoff game, you saw what Justin Herbert and Ladd McConkey were able to do. They bring back a guy like Mike Williams. So they're starting to bring, even though they lost a guy like Josh Palmer, they still are kind of building in those players around them. They even have a Quentin Johnston who hasn't been as good, but he's still, he's showed some flashes as well. Now you also bring that running game to support him with Amarian Hampton that they drafted in the first round, which I thought was quite a shocker considering, Najee Harris addition in free agency, but now you've got that lightning thunder combination, and they also have fortified the offensive line. We know Jim Harbaugh really believes in that. They already had Rashawn Slater. They drafted Joe Alt, and let's not forget, Justin Herbert was finished as the QB12 last year, even though he dealt with that plantar fasciitis early on in the season, which I thought would be, would hamper him more, and it really didn't. So I think at the end of the day, Herbert's been a guy ever since his rookie year. He's been trying to climb back to that guy as far as stats go. He just, he hasn't made it. But I think he could. Even though Harbaugh really relies a lot on the running game, I think he's a bankable guy. He's a consistent guy who could probably get in the top 10. And with all these additions they're making in the offense, Chargers are getting kind of scary. And their defense, honestly, if you look at it, and you probably are a little more aware of it than most because you're a Broncos fan, but it's pretty thin. I think this team, this defense, they're going to be going through them like Swiss cheese, which means more opportunities for the offense.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, how the defense works, and if in fact people will be going through them, and they'll be in those high scoring battles, which would honestly be the ideal scenario for fantasy and for Justin Herbert. But I mean, I agree. I think with Jim Harbaugh and the pieces that they have in offense, I mean, I think there is an opportunity for Herbert to continue the rise that he had last year, and really kind of only get better. And I know we've talked about he might not have as many passing attempts as he had in years past, but more so where that more, the efficiency should be there. Like you said, he's going to be, he's not going to give you those high ceiling games of, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, even Lamar Jackson. But like you said, he's going to be one of those bankable players, consistent. And you're going to know exactly what you're going to get from Herbert, and he's not really going to hurt you.
And this could also depend on your strategy, right? Do you want to have a game breaker at quarterback? Well, if that's the case, then you're going to want to have guys like Josh Allen. But I mean, those guys don't grow on trees, and it'd be pretty hard for you to get him. I mean, I would think that to try to acquire him would cost you quite a bit. So this is a guy who is the middle of the road. I think underrated. I think a lot of times because he doesn't have that dual threat ability, people kind of overlook him. The only downside with him is, okay, if Hampton and Najee get a lot of touchdowns, then maybe it takes away some of that passing touchdown upside for him. But ultimately, we saw, like I said, I thought he did a lot better than I thought he was going to. I didn't even think he was going to play the entire year. I think that plantar fasciitis can really cause some issues. Not that I've ever had it before, but you hear about it anyways.
Yeah, I know you were last season worried about that. I wasn't concerned about that. Played the whole season. I would have been more nervous with other type of injuries, but maybe I don't know. Maybe it's just quarterbacks. And maybe he is a tough guy. Play through things.
So that does it for this episode. We went through some dynasty moves to make to rebuild your roster. You got 3 from Joe and 3 from myself. If you haven't done so already, check out one of our most recent episodes where we went through our top 10 dynasty sleepers that you need to know that were affected post NFL draft. A lot of times the focus is on the rookies, but it's not only about the rookies. These veterans can get a bump based on what happened in the NFL draft. Thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time.